On the first Saturday in May, about 150,000 people crowd into a racetrack in Louisville, Kentucky, and point their cameras at the same two white spires. Then, for roughly 2 minutes, a field of 3-year-old horses runs in a circle. That's it. That's the whole event. It's the most famous 2 minutes in American sport, and if you think it's what Churchill Downs sells, you've been looking exactly where they want you to look. The cameras are aimed at a horse race, the money is somewhere else. Start with the problem, because it's a brutal one. A business built on one weekend a year is a terrifying business. The Derby track itself brought in about $260 million last year, and roughly 87% of that landed inside a single quarter. And that quarter is enormous. On Derby Day alone, people wagered $340 million. Across Derby Week, $487 million. 150,000 of them came through the gates. One rainstorm, one pandemic, one bad Saturday. Your year is gone. Now look at the company that owns it. Churchill Downs Incorporated did nearly $3 billion in revenue last year. The famous racetrack is about 9% of it. So if the Derby isn't the business, what is? Here's the trick. They took the one asset on Earth that nobody can copy and used it as a crowbar. You cannot start a rival Kentucky Derby. You can build a nicer track, you can hire faster horses, offer a fatter purse, sell cheaper tickets. You still cannot manufacture 151 consecutive years of first Saturdays. The Derby isn't protected by a patent because patents expire. It's protected by time. And time isn't for sale. Every May, that one race throws off two things. The first is an enormous pile of cash. The second is rarer and worth more. A century-old, unimpeachable reason to be the people who run horse racing in America. Churchill Downs spent the last decade quietly converting both of those into a business that has almost nothing to do with horses. Today, the company runs on 3 engines, and only one of them smells like a stable. Engine 1. Wagering Services and Solutions. That's TwinSpires, an app that takes your bet on a horse race from your couch, plus the tote systems that process the bets at tracks across the country. Nearly $2 billion of handle moved through it last year, and notice what it is not. In 2022, Churchill Downs looked at online sports betting, the loudest, fastest-growing, most hyped market in America, and walked away. They shut the whole thing down. Everyone else was lighting money on fire to buy customers. Churchill Downs decided it would rather be the only adult in a small room than the 40th kid in a big one. Engine 2. Gaming. Regional casinos, scattered through the unglamorous places nobody makes documentaries about. Roughly $1 billion a year, boring, reliable. Open on a Tuesday. And Engine 3, the one the entire thesis rests on. Walk into Derby City Gaming in Louisville. It looks exactly like a casino. Rows of bright cabinets, spinning reels, chiming jackpots, carpet designed by someone who hates you. Sit down, press the button. Watch the reels spin. You are not playing a slot machine. You are betting on a horse race. Specifically, a real race run years ago, at some track, by horses whose names and dates and jockeys have all been stripped out. The machine pulls it from a library of tens of thousands of them. Your money goes into a pari-mutuel pool with everybody else's. The reels are a costume. Underneath, legally, it is the same thing people have done at racetracks since before your grandparents were born. These are historical racing machines, and they are the most quietly ingenious thing in American gambling. Because here is what that costume buys. Kentucky has never legalized commercial casinos. Virginia only cracked the door, so if you are MGM or Caesars or Wynn, and you want a casino floor in Louisville, you can't have one. There is no license. There is no application. The door does not exist. But Churchill Downs isn't asking for a casino license. They already have a racing license. They've had one since 1875, so they built the floor anyway. 10,190 machines, 16 venues, 500,000 square feet, all of it inside 2 states where their biggest competitors are legally not allowed to follow. And these rooms are ruthlessly efficient. That engine turns $1.4 billion of revenue into $637 million of adjusted earnings. A 46% margin. Real casinos dream about numbers like that. It is now the company's largest engine by far at nearly half of everything they make. The Derby paid for the crowbar. The racing license was the crack in the wall. Which brings us to the problem with moats made of paper. A regulatory moat is not a fortress wall. It is a permission slip. And permission slips can be torn up by the same people who wrote them. In 2020, the Kentucky Supreme Court looked closely at these machines and ruled that the main system behind them was not pari mutual wagering at all. Not a technicality. The entire legal foundation, the most profitable engine in the company, was briefly illegal. So what happened? The Kentucky legislature simply rewrote the law. In 2021, they changed the statutory definition of pari mutual wagering to explicitly include the machines. The moat wasn't defended in court, it was re-legislated. A pen put it back. Sit with that for a second. The most protected cash flow in this business exists because a state legislature decided that it should, and Kentucky happens to have an enormous, obvious 150-year-old reason to want Churchill Downs to keep winning. But not every state has a Kentucky Derby. Historical racing is legal in 8 states. Churchill Downs runs machines in 2 of them. The moat isn't the technology. Anyone can buy the technology. The moat is the state house. In 2025, Louisiana's Supreme Court reached the same question and gave the opposite answer. That state's historical racing law was unconstitutional. No rewrite, no rescue. Churchill Downs switched its Louisiana machines off, loaded them onto trucks, and drove them to Virginia. $19 million of revenue gone by court order. And the balance sheet has its own weather. $5.2 billion of debt against about $1 billion of equity. A debt-to-equity ratio north of 5. That number looks alarming, and it is mostly self-inflicted, in a strange way on purpose. They have been buying back their own stock so aggressively that the equity side keeps shrinking. But leverage doesn't care about your reasons, and last year on record revenue, profit actually fell 10%. So is the fortress cracking? Not really, but it's worth being precise about what is load-bearing. Strip out the accounting drama, and the actual coverage is calm. Secured net leverage sits around 1.4 times, against a covenant that allows 4. Interest is covered nearly 4 times over. This is not a company clinging to a ledge. It is a company that decided equity is expensive and debt is cheap, and acted on it. $425 million of buybacks last year alone. And watch what they do with the cash, because the pattern is the entire story. In April 2026, Churchill Downs paid $85 million for the intellectual property of the Preakness Stakes. Not a track, not a building. The name, the rights, 150 years of the second leg of the Triple Crown. Think about what they just bought. Another race that cannot be started, cannot be copied, and cannot be competed with, because it already happened, every year for a century and a half. They now own 2 of the 3 legs, and they keep feeding the thing that started all of it. $300 million is going into a new building on the first turn, finished in time for the 2028 Derby. The crown jewel gets polished every single year. Meanwhile, in New Hampshire, they are building the next room, a casino in Salem with 825 historical racing machines, opening in 2027. A new state, a new statute, the same crowbar. They are not buying growth. They are buying things that already cannot be repeated and then renting out the doorway. Which brings us back to those 2 white spires. They have stood over that track since 1895. They are on the tickets, the trophy, the merchandise, the postcards, every photograph anybody has ever taken of the place. And when Churchill Downs built the app that takes bets 365 days a year, they named it TwinSpires. That is the whole business in one word. The spires are not the product, they are the door. Everyone comes for the 2 minutes, the hats, the horses, the roses, the one Saturday that everybody agrees to care about, and almost nobody notices that the 2 minutes are just the part you are allowed to photograph. The greatest 2 minutes in sports exist to pay for the other 525,000. This video is sponsored by Moat. Everything we just covered, irreplaceable assets, protected cash flows, quality at a fair price, is simple in theory. Actually finding those companies, that's the hard part. That's exactly what Moat is built for. It rates thousands of stocks on the two things that matter most: how strong the moat is and how much you'd pay for it. Quality times valuation on one simple scorecard, so you can spot the widening moats that are actually trading at a fair price. Check out Moat at the link below and go find your next compounder.